Welcome to Hochoka Podcast.
I ponder within my heart, where will I gather the holy, fragrant flowers? Who will I ask? If they showed them to me, I will fill my tilma, and with them I will greet the nobles. With them I will make the lords happy. This famous pre-colonial native song is a key that opens our imaginations to the mystery of the apparition of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Let's open that door. Hello, Madakiepi, and welcome to Hochoka here at the center of St. Joseph's Indian School's campus. I'm your host today, Scott Wooster, and you're joined in this circle by Dr. Damian Costello. He's a frequent guest who joins us today to give us another fresh perspective on the spiritual through an indigenous lens. So once again, welcome, Damian.
Thank you, Scott.
So we talked off air, and this is a subject that I have not been exposed to very much. Didn't get it in school. Didn't get it as an adult. Didn't get it in church growing up. And I have not traveled much south of the border, so I don't know. And I'm fascinated with what I've learned just from reading scripts and what I've talked to you about. I'm looking forward to learning more. It's that time of year, I think, where this is kind of a special piece because the feast day of Juan Diego, who's the indigenous convert to whom Our Lady of Guadalupe appeared, and also the first indigenous saint of the Americas. That's on December 9th, which is coming up. And our feast of the Lady of Guadalupe, patroness of the Americas, is on December 12th, 4 days after her first apparition when the miracle of the tilma occurred. And I don't know much about the tilma either, so you're going to have to teach me on that. So it's just timely that we're talking about that today because a couple of those red letter days are arriving. So I need you to bring me up to speed, and for our audience that isn't aware, them as well.
Sure. I think one reason why you haven't gotten this story is that it's often considered to be a Latin American story or a Mexican or a Latino story, which it is. But here at St. Joseph Indian School, we should know about it because it's an indigenous story, first and foremost. So this occurred in central Mexico, which was the center of the Aztec Empire. And Juan Diego, he was a middle-aged man of Chichimec background, so he was a twice-conquered person. He had been conquered by the Aztecs. Aztecs were a powerful tribe that came into central Mexico and sort of conquered all of central Mexico. And his people were absorbed into that world. And the Spanish had shown up about a decade earlier. And Cortez and his conquistadors conquered the Aztec Empire.
Okay.
And so this is about 10 years after that. Not many natives had engaged Catholicism at all. Juan Diego had, and so he used to walk regularly to Mass, about 9 miles every weekend. And this would take him by the hill Tepeyac. Now, the Aztecs were very spiritual people in sort of, from our perspective, a complicated way. Had a very rich spirituality, but part of it was human sacrifice.
Okay.
And so a lot of their war captives were sacrificed at the Templo Mayor, at the center of Tenochtitlan, which was one of the biggest cities in the world. Most people don't know that. I think that the third biggest city at that time. And when the Spanish saw it, they were amazed. This is like Venice. This is beyond anything we've ever seen before. And Tepeyac had been the site of a temple to one of the Aztec spirits, a Tonitzan, who was a spirit of corn and flowers, woman spirit. So he's walking by and he hears singing. And he looks up and he sees this brilliant woman clothed in Aztec regalia. And she talks to him in his native language, Nahuatl. And she tells him to go to the Archbishop, the head of the church in Mexico City, and all of that region, and to ask him to build a church at this hill. She really wanted a church built there. And so he's like, he's not going to listen to me. I'm just this poor Indian. You should send somebody more important that he'll listen to. But he ends up going. The Archbishop, as he expected, dismisses him, and he goes away. And she appears to him a couple more times and says, no, you need to go do this. And so one of the times he goes, the Archbishop asks for a sign, and he reports that back to Mary. who Juan Diego recognized as Mary, but she did not tell him that. This is something he understood. The last time he went, he was supposed to go, and she had told him she was going to give him a sign. It just so happened his uncle was dying, got very sick. And his uncle was also Catholic. He said, go get a priest so that he can give me the sacraments before I die. And so Juan Diego intentionally bypassed, I don't have time for this other errand. I've got to help my uncle. But the Virgin appears to him anyway and says, don't worry, your uncle's been healed. Go pick some flowers at the top of Tepeyac. And so this is December. Flowers are not in season. He goes there and finds the most beautiful roses in full bloom, which he gathers and puts in his tilma and brings to the Archbishop. And when he gets there, his whole court, he had these retainers and, followers at the court of the Archbishop, saw this and were amazed. And the Archbishop understood that he had had an authentic vision. The other subtext to this is that he was very suspicious of native people coming to him with visions. He associated that with, what we would call paganism, and didn't think that they would be helpful for converting them to Catholicism. And so, but it was through a vision, a very native way, that Juan Diego encountered the Virgin Mary.
A tilma is what? That's a basket that he filled with the flowers?
It's actually a cloak.
A cloak.
Sort of a shawl that you would wear. And one interesting detail is that commoners, their tilma was not decorated. It was very plain. Only nobles could have decoration. And when the flowers opened up, the people who were there were amazed to see that there was the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe imprinted on the tilma. So which both in and of itself was a very amazing image that has survived to this day, unexpectedly, but that signals a person of great importance. That Juan Diego is, in fact, noble in what he has done. He
wasn't who they thought he was.
Exactly.
And was the uncle, did he receive his health? That's
the other part of the story. So he did receive his health, and when Juan Diego went back, his uncle told him, he said, when you were gone, she appeared to me and told me her name. My name is the Virgin of Guadalupe, and which is significant. As you know, in indigenous cultures, elders are very important, and that was true in the Aztec and the surrounding people's context, that she revealed herself fully to the elder in that particular family.
Absolutely. You and I have talked extensively about the importance of storytelling in any culture, in any religion, in spirituality, in growth of man and woman, and how we learn to sort things out in our lives. Right there is I've never heard that story before, and it's got everything you could possibly want in that. I'm so honored to be able to hear that story.
And the other layer, which I don't think is told enough when people tell the story. I mean, in and of itself, what we just said is it's a beautiful story. But to draw out the context a little bit more, we talked about the empire and the conquest. So in the preceding 150 years, the Aztecs were this unbelievable war machine that steamrolled almost all of central Mexico. And again, they were complicated, human sacrifice. Their symbol for conquest was a burning temple, that they would come in and replace the gods, the spirits that were there, with their own. And so there was a lot of sort of simmering resentment among the conquered people. They had to provide tribute in slaves for sacrifice, food, luxury goods, feathers. There's stories of like runners who would go from the highlands of Mexico City, which is like at 8,000 feet, all the way down to the Caribbean, and run back fish up for the emperor. And then the Spaniards show up in 1521. They get a lot of support from the conquered people initially and help conquer Tenochtitlan, but the battle is almost beyond anything that we can imagine today. They absolutely destroyed the entire city. They had to go block to block and destroy everything in order to conquer the Aztecs. We're talking about literally tens of thousands of warriors on both sides, incredible suffering, disease. And so it's in that context that the Mother of God, from a Catholic perspective, entered into the story of absolute suffering and devastation and chaos, and brought this message of hope and love.
Yeah, and in times of most desperate need, when you need it the most, here's this apparition. Yeah, so I can see why it would be that important. You mentioned the indigenous connections in the story, and I'm beginning to see those parallels a little more. Can you unpack that for us?
So I mentioned the Aztec regalia. We know this well at St. Joseph Indian School. You go to Our Lady of the Sioux, the chapel, and look out front, and there's that beautiful statue of Mary in Lakota regalia.
Right.
And so when the Aztec peoples, and the various peoples associated with them saw that, they saw a spirit in their regalia. She appeared as a mestiza, which was half native, half European. Which, there were a lot of mestizos being born at that time, but that her and herself was this blend of the new peoples, of a new people that was being formed. There's just all kinds of details that the listeners should go and get the specifics of. But she has a cloak that's covered with stars. And one of the claims that's very interesting, readers can figure out what they think of it, but that the stars are laid out exactly as they would have appeared at Tepeyac in December, the day she appeared. The stars change throughout the year.
Right.
And so those constellations are accurately depicted on her cloak. She has a belt just above her stomach, a maternity belt that Aztec noble women would wear, and she's visibly pregnant. This is December, right before the birth of Christ. All sorts of different things.
Right.
The flowers, I think, is the most important detail. In a Lakota context, someone shows you a buffalo skull or a feather, and that evokes sort of the best of the native world, right? When Black Elk has his vision of the promised land in the ghost dance, it's the plains as they were covered with buffalo. And for the Aztec peoples, Central Mexican indigenous peoples, flowers was the symbol that evoked the best of their hopes and understanding of truth, their vision of what was eternal. You refer to that song at the beginning, and flowers were symbolized. There's one phrase that the only thing that lasts forever is flowers, right? And not a negative thing that, okay, everything goes away, but that's the fullest expression of truth to which we are connected to. And so for her to offer flowers to then give to the Archbishop was sort of a wrapping up of everything good about the indigenous peoples of that area as a sign for the Archbishop to sort of learn, I think.
Yeah, and growing in the middle of December, at that time where they wouldn't have, that's a pretty powerful image.
And then the last detail that I shouldn't miss, I won't attempt the Nahuatl or the Aztec name, but Juan Diego's Aztec name means talking eagle.
Okay.
And just in this context, the eagle was a symbol of royal power, of spiritual authority, and that was his name, that he had the authority to bring this message to those who were in power.
Yeah, I see the parallels. They're all fascinating. I even with the star piece of it too. You've got that connection to the Lakota people who were, star people. They were guided by the stars. The stories were there. The ancestors are in the stars, and I like that parallel of that too. That's pretty neat.
And the birth of the Son of God occurs with
following stars,
following a star.
Yeah, yeah. Up until this point, the motto of the Spanish conquerors who had come in 10 years before, you say, was gold, God, and glory. And they had a lot of success, my understanding is, with the gold piece of it and the glory part, if you consider, what they did. Glory, gruesome would be the other G that probably comes to my mind. But they didn't have much luck converting the indigenous people there to Christianity. And I kind of hinted at it in the introduction that there might be another layer to the story that would tell us why this miracle was so compelling.
Well, to fully understand their limitations, they're limited if really no success in quote unquote converting the natives, was that there were very few people who were even concerned about that at all. You know, we're accustomed to thinking like this was some sort of crusade where people were convinced of the truth of their religion, and, you know, went out and wanted to convert people by the sword, and if they got some money on the side, that'd be great. These were largely mafioso types, who very clearly articulated that they were there to become the lords that they had wanted to be in Spain, but couldn't. This was an opportunity. This is new territory. Some of them did kind of concern themselves with God a little bit, but it was sort of like a side job, right? They're not gonna risk success by pushing the God stuff in any meaningful way. And when they did conquer, the best they would do is maybe give money to some priests to come over to do a little work. So it was not like some sort of authentic attempt on the part of most people to share the good news or even live by it. Right? These are people who had no qualms of changing the rules in order to, you know, become powerful. I love how a couple of my native Catholic colleagues talk about this story. They talk about this as, you know, we're so used to the story of the European missionaries showing up and spreading the gospel, and if we tell any sort of success stories, it's because of the European missionary. And that's who we learn about, that's who we pray to and we idolize. And they say, if you really look at this story, it's the Europeans who are the recipient of the gospel and authentic spirituality. That Mary, there's no success for decade. Mary, who does she choose? She does not choose the European colonist, does not choose the conquistador or even the humble Spanish friar who's come across the Atlantic. It's a native elder, a humble native elder, that she appears to in his language, in his cultural form, with the markers of their spirituality that bring it to an unreceptive audience at first. And through a sign that is very clearly indigenous, they sort of get on board. And it's at this point where Catholicism becomes a major part of indigenous life in Latin America, particularly in Mexico. Like literally hundreds of thousands of people who become Catholic in a meaningful way and in a way that is not determined by Europeans. And so to get back to Patrick Mason, who's Osage, Graydon Nicholas, he's Maliseet from New Brunswick. They're big in the Knights of Columbus. But they say, this is an indigenous Mary. And the story of Catholicism in the Americas has to start here with the indigenous people, because that's what God chose.
And not with a beneficent robed guy holding a cross in front of him, but with somebody, some simple man.
Problematic natives who just don't ever seem to get it.
Right.
It's a very different way of thinking about this spiritual path, particularly in this context here at St. Joseph's, right? Where we still are thinking about how do we talk and live an authentic Catholic spirituality in a complex reality.
If you look at it in the right way, it flips the script 100, completely. It changes everything about it. I like that too. Another great piece of that.
And I also say that scholars talk about this. Mexico is sort of unique compared to a lot of Latin American countries. Now, the Virgin of Guadalupe shows up everywhere. She's the patron of the Americas, and you find it on buses, you find it in restaurants, you find it on T-shirts. I almost wore mine today. I forgot it back home. But it's in Mexico where you had the most integrated society. In a lot of Latin America, you had a very stratified racial and culturally. Peru being a good example, that was conquered by Pizarro, another major conquistador. There continued to be rebellions and much more antagonism between the different classes. Now, nothing was perfect in Mexico by any means, but there was a sort of authentic new identity that was born where the Catholic faith was an integral part of that. People believed that they were one society on a certain level. And this spirituality, this fusion, it provided sort of a new glue where people could believe in the possibility of living in a better way, coming out of a cauldron of chaos.
And dominoes for Catholicism began to fall and began to spread and begin to take hold and take root. So my question, and we're looking at the parallel with our indigenous society up here in North America, is how did the existing spirituality, if there was one, how did the existing indigenous spirituality remain, or how did that flourish? Was it extinguished? Were there the same attempts that were made here? How did that look after that?
You go to Mexico today, let's keep it to there. I think, I'm not an expert in this. I've visited numerous times and read other scholars. It does continue to exist, indigenous spirituality, particularly in, say, a Mayan context.
Okay.
Right, where there is autonomous indigenous spiritual life. Dancing is a very big part of this, and there's this ongoing conversation between what had been there since time immemorial and what came recently. Certainly, there's blemishes and differences of opinions, like we have in any context. But there's a legacy of survival in a way that we haven't seen here.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I want to take a step back, and you explained what a tilma was, and I want to go back to that and just have you talk again a little bit about why that and the flower was so influential, not only on the Archbishop but also on the people.
Well, what's interesting about the tilma, as I said before, it's still here today. This is made out of cactus fiber. They say like in 5 years usually a garment like that will wear out and will be completely disintegrated relatively soon after that. It's still here in the form that it was 500 years ago. The image, and this is the scientists reporting this, it's not made by anything that we recognize. And there's all kinds of claims like about the pupils of her eyes in the image. You zoom in on that, and it's said that you can see the reflection of the Archbishop and his court receiving the flowers. It sounds great.
Yeah.
I'm not going to challenge it.
Right.
But
yeah,
that's an interesting detail.
Yeah.
Listeners should go and research what they think about that. But it's a miracle in and of itself that it survives. And if you go to the cathedral today, the most visited pilgrimage site in the Americas, it's said, that's what you look at, the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe up at the front of the church.
And have you been there?
Yes.
And how were you affected by your experience with the tilma?
I would say that the whole experience is unlike anything we have here in the U.S. We have, generally our religious practices are separate and separate from our regular activities and usually restricted to a smaller type of people, right? Like in a native context, you go to Sundance, and there's a certain type of people that go to Sundance. It's not all of your community,
right?
Broader community.
For sure.
You go to the shrine in Mexico City, and it's everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone from Mexico, from across the world. You take the metro there. You climb the hills. There's a number of different churches. As the years went on, new churches were built to make it bigger to accommodate the people that would come. And it's a very much sort of like a regular part of life, like what people must do. Like we're from rural places. When you go to New York City, you go to Times Square, it's a vacation. There's good food to eat. There's people from across the world. There's people watching. But this deep spiritual experience that is very transformative for me to have been there and to think about what spirituality can look like in that sort of broad sense. When we sort of like take it out of the box, we don't have any preconceived notions, all the narratives we have about why we don't have to take it seriously or why it's a problem, you just let that go. And you see things anew that you had taken for granted before.
Huh. I'm thinking, as you're saying that, with as pervasive as it is and how it affects so many people, the question why keeps popping into my mind, and I don't know if there's an answer to that. But the simplest thing, and I'm going to let you speak to this because I think it's that mystery, where for me, that's how I guess I'm asking that. Is it that kind of thing that you don't have to understand, but it draws you in for whatever reason that is? It is its own function or whatever.
Talking about this in the last few days, it reminded me of the Good Red Road and Black Elk's vision, right? And people walking down that road. And you don't always know why the Good Red Road functions the way it does, or where you're going, but when you're on that path. And so the understanding of Mary, some people may not understand what's being said here, right? Because Catholics, we have Mary showing up everywhere. There's all kinds of apparitions. She's always showing up. Sometimes it seems silly, like, oh, there's her image on a piece of toast.
Right.
Other times it's more compelling like this. The idea is that Mary is the most actualized human being that has lived, other than God, who became Jesus. And that she is the furthest ahead on the red road. And she sees the furthest ahead. She's sort of like, we talked about the white buffalo woman going to the hill on the horizon and rolling on the ground and becoming the buffalo before disappearing. That moment of liminal space where you see what is coming. You see what is promised. You've tasted it because she fully said yes to what was asked of her. And so she continually turns around to help us.
Yeah.
No, you can make it.
Yeah.
And so if these apparitions are true, which I tend to think, that's her love for us embodied in, I did it, you can too.
I love the idea that we look to a woman to be that symbol and to lead us, because it is prominent in the indigenous culture in North America, the feminine side of that and how important they are to the life of the people. I assume it's the same in the South American, is what I'm hearing.
There's, sometimes there's too much made of this, but there's a need for all of us, I think, for maternal care. And whether we had that at home or we didn't, this is God acting through his mother, and she acts on her own to be that maternal presence and to help us along that journey. Yeah,
I love it. And I think that sums this up perfectly, Damien, when you say that this woman and can help us on our red road, and the whole story can lead us into a better way of walking on this earth.
So I'm going to leave you with some homework. When I come back, Our Lady of the Sioux should have an image of the Virgin of Guadalupe inside. And maybe the kids, as part of their formation, will learn the story about how she appeared as an indigenous woman to an indigenous man. Yeah,
I love that story, and I hope they can see that connection. Great stuff, as always.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you very much. And thank you to our audience for being here at the center of St. Joseph's Indian Schools campus at Hochoka, where we talk about issues that are central to Native American education today. Until next time, stay centered.